This is the UXR Minds podcast with your host, Dale Husband, the place to get all of your UX and especially UXR career advice as I interview UX industry leaders. Remember to give a follow on the platform you're using to get this episode to keep up to date with each episode release. Now, let's get into today's interview. Super happy to get Maria Rosala onto the podcast. She's the Director of Research at Nielsen Norman Group. She has over 10 years of experience as a UX researcher, whether it be Nielsen Norman Group or the UK Home Office. Now, this is a special episode and I've broken it down into two parts. So today will be part one, focusing more on the advice that she wants to share for those who are entering the UX research field, and then we'll be releasing part two at a later date. So kick back and enjoy this episode. Okay, so now many have reached out to me that they are listening to the podcast, but they are trying to enter the UX field, specifically user experience research, and are finding it tough to even just get interviews sometimes. A lot of different feedback on their portfolios. If they are to have a portfolio, what should that look like, or what should they highlight on their CV, things like that. So just from your point of view, what advice would you like to share to those listeners?
Yeah, great question. I think first of all, if you're considering getting into the user experience field and you're not 100% sure yet, I think it's really important to speak to people who are currently doing the job in different contexts as well, to understand if you actually would like it. Because some people like the idea of it, but then when they actually see what the job entails, they realize maybe it's not a good fit. So I would speak to, reach out to people, whether it's, maybe you're reaching out to people kind of by cold calling them, almost like you're finding them on LinkedIn. Maybe they've written a bit about their experiences in user experience, or you've read their work, right? You can send them a message. Not everyone will respond, maybe some people are busy, but you may find someone who has a spare 45 minutes to chat with you about what their role kind of entails. So I would do that if you're not sure, because also depending on the industry and the company, the company's UX maturity, the job can look really different. So I do a lot of research with UX practitioners as part of my role at Nielsen Norman Group, because a lot of the time we're researching UX researchers to know how to provide good advice to people. So, I've done research with UX researchers that work in a very mature organization, and they're doing research all the time, and they're working really collaboratively. Maybe they're not co-located, but they're sort of within a product team, and the product team is all bought into doing research regularly, and it forms a product, and that's amazing. But then I also do research with UX practitioners who are completely siloed. They don't work with design. They're reporting to a different, they're in a different structure of the organization, and they kind of a bit of like a help desk, like people just reach out and say, we need this piece of, you do it for us. So the work looks really different depending on the organization. And I think that's an important thing to bear in mind and to look for when you're trying to get your first role. Is this going to be of course, sometimes we have no choice and we have to pick the first job that comes our way.
Sure.
But, you're going to be in a much better position if the company working in has a little bit higher UX maturity, because then it's like have more support, more mentorship, more established processes that you can kind of work within to learn.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing. I think just reading as much as you can about the field and about the methods, and try and pick reputable sources. Nielsen Norman Group is a great starting point, but there are a lot of other kind of thinkers in the field. So start following people on LinkedIn, try to read as much as you can. Also, a piece of advice, just note that there is also a lot of junk out there.
Sifting through that is difficult, and that's something I struggled with as well, kind of knowing, because you do start following something that you find, and then you start seeing other people talking about that, and you think, maybe it wasn't the best thing to follow.
How did you deal with that, Dale? How did you figure out what felt like good advice and what seemed a little bit like, maybe it's just clickbait and it's not helpful. Maybe it's not actually
Yeah.
based on reality or.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think just like you mentioned before, speaking to as many people as possible, which on the flip side, you might expose yourself to more kind of, yeah, clickbait stuff. But identifying the let's say the establishments like Nielsen Norman Group, etc., that they are reputable sources, that they do provide resources and information on UX that is valid. And then just kind of seeing amongst my network who kind of interacts with that sort of stuff, who, if they do share something, a resource or some advice, like try to find out where that's come from. And if it has come from a source like Nielsen Norman Group, I know that I can kind of trust that
Mhm.
resource and also that person who's sharing that work. I think it was just, yeah, trial and error and realizing, maybe following something and doing something and realizing, yeah, this was probably not the best thing based on
Yeah.
either the results of it, if it was within some work that I was doing, or just through, yeah, from what other people were talking about, and then just, yeah, kind of trying to filter that out. But it's, yeah, a long-term process, especially at the beginning when you're new yourself, because you don't know what you're looking at, whether it is valid or not.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
did it. It's probably like a very cliche answer, but that's what I did.
I think that's really smart. So if you're looking at these, of these one or two reputable sources, then you're seeing
Yeah,
who's interacting with that. And then, if they're sharing other resources, then it's likely that those other resources can be, possibly could be trusted.
yeah,
So that
exactly.
process, like the more you have those conversations with
Yeah,
people, and the more you kind of read, like the better you are to be able to kind of spot stuff that you feel like this. I'm confident this is right, given the other conversations that
mhm,
the overlaps that are
yeah.
present. This seems a little bit odd, and I'm going to treat this with a pinch of salt or a bit of suspicion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's no foolproof way, but yeah, I would say that's probably, for me, that was the best way to do it. And then yeah, just, and also there are like a lot of people, because now there are so many people that are in UX.
Mhm.
And I think kind of having a look at their experience as well. They are a person that is sharing stuff. Just kind of
Mhm.
having a look, do they have that experience to trust and back up what they're sharing and talking about? Because yeah, sometimes you notice people are talking about UX and either they're working in a completely different field. Maybe
Yeah.
they have colleagues that are UXers and maybe they're trying to kind of get in, which is fair enough. But then if they're sharing stuff that pretending to have the authority to talk on
Right.
that, you need to be, yeah, from my point of view, you need to be wary about that. And yeah,
Yeah.
but it can be easy because there are so many.
Yeah, you're totally right. And thank God for LinkedIn, right? Because you can
Yeah.
easily take a look at someone's LinkedIn profile and kind of piece together, like, has this person been hopping
Yeah.
between a lot of jobs in the last 3 years? And maybe actually they weren't really stuck in on some projects, at this
Yeah.
company. Because I mean, what can you really achieve in like 6 months?
It's true.
If you've only been there for, you're early in your career. So that's when
Yeah.
I start to get a little bit suspicious. But yeah,
Sure.
I think that's really good advice in terms of like doing a little bit of research on the people that are
Yeah.
publishing,
Yeah,
basically.
we are researchers, so it makes
Yes,
sense to also research
it
and do
does.
research. I also had one question on that as well, for you. What are some reputable sources that people can trust, apart from obviously Nielsen Norman Group? Are there some like sites or programs or anything that has helped you, or that has helped others?
Yeah, so I would obviously what I was reading is very different from what people are reading
Sure.
today. Obviously, there are some big websites that have helpful information on them, like IDF,
Mhm.
Interaction Design
Yeah.
Foundation, Smashing Magazine. Like there are a few different websites that kind of publish information that can be like trusted, or is kind of like what are the top kind of like well-established topics in the field.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah.
that those are a great starting point.
Mhm.
I would also like read stuff that the UK government has produced because they have
Yeah.
pretty high UX maturity.
Mhm.
I subscribe to the UK Gov's blog, digital teams blog, and that typically has like summaries of like what people are doing, and then from there, I usually will follow people who've worked in a similar job to me in the
Yeah.
UK Gov, because I
Mhm.
know I know from working there that, we did, the people who are working there know how to do UX research
Yeah.
or understand
Yeah.
user-centered design. So a lot of the stuff that I read is often through my own network, like
Yeah.
people I've worked with in the past and have seen and are just incredibly inspiring. I know for a fact, like I can trust what they write because they hold a
Yeah.
lot of authority in that space. Plus, they're good writers.
Yeah.
So I would, look at particular people in the field who have a lot of experience, a lot of authority, read
Yeah.
their
Mm.
follow. But if you're not sure like which particular sites to start with, Interaction Design Foundation, Nielsen Norman
Mm.
Group, like those are kind of the
Yeah.
big sites that have been around for a long time and have
Yeah.
been publishing research or publishing guidance or best
Mm.
practice for many, many years. So I would start there,
Yeah.
going on a hunt through Google. Sometimes you find Medium articles and they may or may not be
Yeah.
good, depending on who.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are some authors that are reputable and they publish on Medium, but yeah, these open kind of source platforms, yeah, because they'll accept anyone can publish, which is a good thing, but also a bad thing. So yeah, like yeah, just being careful with that. Also, another one that someone shared with me actually recently is GitHub.
Okay.
I know a few people that have worked there as well, and they told me that their UX maturity is really high, and they've published kind of a big kind of workbook on UX research and methodologies and different tests that they've run. So that's another one that if anyone's listening, that can be good to follow.
Yeah.
Cool. Before we do finish, I love your banner at the back. It depends. I just noticed it a couple of minutes ago. The
Yeah,
motto for research.
yeah, totally. Because I was teaching yesterday, I've got some fun like Nielsen Norman Group mottos / swag in the background. It is a great motto for our work and for our field because our work is so contextually dependent.
Yeah,
The same goes
it
for
all does
advice.
depend.
Like I think me and you, Dale, are chatting here about like advice that we'd give to people.
Mm.
But I think any listeners just need to kind of treat any advice that you get with a pinch
Yeah,
of salt, and think about, well, what's your context and,
yeah,
where are you at in your
mm,
career?
yeah,
What skills do you bring to the table? Some things will apply and some things won't. And so,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that leads nicely or lends itself nicely to what we were saying before that, yeah, everyone does have different circumstances, contexts, experiences, background. And I think you've got to kind of, yeah, find these reputable sources and advice and then kind of patch it together to fit what works best for you. And that's what I did. Like I networked with, this was also before like things like ADP lists that obviously does give you access to good mentors. That was before that. So I used LinkedIn as my mentoring platform and just reached out to senior UXers. And yeah, just taking the advice that best fits you, not taking the ones that you want to hear, but just fits best to where you're at in your career. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's advice that, yeah, maybe you realize you've gone up the wrong path. I need to backtrack a bit. But yeah, just kind of patching together your advice. And that's what helped me. And I think that's kind of
Mhm.
lending itself to what you were saying before as well.
Yeah, totally. One other thing, Dale, I think would be helpful for those that are actually career transitioners, like
Mm,
yourself, maybe even myself a little bit,
yeah,
is thinking about how you can kind of sell the skills that you have acquired in
yeah.
your past work as real
Mm,
assets for joining the UX field, in particular UX
yeah.
research. So I can't
Mm,
remember if this was being recorded when we were chatting earlier, possibly not. But you've had some education in music. Well,
mm,
it sounds like it's completely unrelated, but it's not, right? There
yeah.
may be some things there that really you can bring through from that prior career
Yeah.
or that prior skill set or experience that you've had through to kind of applying it to, well, in the UX context, what does that mean? Does it
Yeah.
mean that you are good at um, seeing patterns in data and extract
Mm,
meaning from data? Or,
yeah.
you mentioned that you've got experience teaching, right? You're
Yeah.
transitioning from a career in teaching. Well, teaching is an amazing skill set, and it
Mm,
means that you communicate really well with people and explain concepts in a
mhm.
hard UX concepts, right? In a understand digestible manner. Spend some time if you're thinking about and you're trying to, I don't know, prepare resumes, CVs,
Mm,
portfolio. Think about what you will bring.
mm,
What is great about user experience is that people aren't really looking for tons of like, especially for a junior position, they're not looking for tons of hard skills.
Yeah.
They're looking for those soft skills. I hate calling them soft
Hmm.
skills, but like they're looking for those really important skill sets that can help you be a great collaborator, a great team player, a logical thinker, someone who like can
Mm.
get the work done, that isn't afraid to kind of like roll up their sleeves and like users and
Mm.
get scrappy sometimes because there's not enough budget. So
Yeah.
think about how you kind of developed those skills and those attributes and really present those
Yeah.
in the preparing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the good things about the UX field as well, that you can transition over from, because like you say, like different skills and backgrounds are applicable to UX. And yeah, like I mentioned it before, but my background teaching, I've done customer care, studied
Mhm.
Cisco, I studied IT, hardware. On the face of it, might not seem relevant. You might think, how does Cisco apply to? But it's all relevant, like you say. So, and kind of, even if it's like I don't know, one skill, if that's the right word, like one skill set that you can kind of apply to UX, highlight it on your CV, highlight it when you're, I don't know, having a look at job descriptions and you see, okay, that's similar to what I've done in the past in a different role or different experience. Don't ignore it. Put it on
Yeah.
your CV and highlight it, and then also bring it up in the interview or the chat that you have with the hiring manager. And it's a skill that you know and that you can apply it. So not to, because I've noticed sometimes that people do have different backgrounds and they try to make like a clean cut in their
Mm.
transition over. And maybe in the longer term you can do that, but I think at the beginning you're not doing yourself justice because they are skills that you can utilize. So
I
yeah.
100% agree with that. And if you're kind of just sort of like starting from scratch, like you're not really going to have that much to put in your resume. So but I always like seeing when, we're looking to hire there, some of the people we've hired at Nielsen Norman Group are pretty junior, and they've not possibly, although career transitioners, and they've done something different. But what's really impressive is when they can kind of, it's clear they understand the field and they want to be
Yeah.
in it. And they've pulled out things from their prior experience, said, look, I'm really good at X, right? I've done this in this capacity, and this is how I can bring that skill to you and your team. And obviously demonstrating that through portfolios or
Yeah.
exercises they might be given or like in the interview is also going to be
Hmm.
essential. But
Sure.
that's really important. That's how you will grab people's attention, because they'll be like,
Yeah.
great, this person clearly understands what this role entails. And
Mm.
they're showing me that they have those things. It might not be in a
Yeah.
UX context, but
Hmm.
it's applied somewhere else, and that's
Yeah.
totally transferable.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, no, it's all true. 100% agree.
Mm.
Cool. Thank you. We'll end it here. I don't want to kind of take up all of your day because I imagine you're busy. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and also like provide this content for our listeners.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure chatting to you, Dale. So you mentioned that you're currently working at the moment. Are you contracting or you're working for a company?
Um, I'm actually working for a startup called Skyfi. It's in the geospatial industry. So
Cool.
working with selling satellite imagery and analytics and things like that. So yeah, really interesting. Been a big learning curve. But yeah, in March my contract ends with them, so I'm looking for new opportunities. So I'm
Gotcha.
back on the job hunt.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Well, best of luck with everything. I think it's really impressive that
Thank you.
you're doing this podcast as well, because I think not only is it probably helpful to other people who were in your position like a few years ago,
Yeah,
I think it's also great for just like developing those skills of interviewing, and it's
yeah,
really transferable to your actual discipline. So really
absolutely.
neat.
Yeah. No, no, it's been good. Yeah, like you say, developing my interview skills and also just like chatting to people like you as well that like when I was first transitioning over, I didn't first of all have the confidence to reach out to people that were
Yeah.
in your position. And it's something that I did listen to podcasts when I was learning, but sometimes I felt they were a bit kind of above my level
Mm.
of expertise to fully understand. And so I always made a promise to myself when I was in a position when I had a bit more experience and I was able to help others that were in my position at the time now, and I could provide some form of platform to share advice and stuff. So thank you for
Yeah, that's
being side as well.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Thanks for the chat today. I really enjoyed it.